For the longest time, we've measured how well a country is doing with one main number, GDP. But what if that's not the whole story? What if there's a better way to see what's going on? A way to measure not just what a country makes, but how its people actually feel. Well, today, we're going to dive into how some amazing new technology is giving us a real-time emotional pulse of an entire nation.
So let's just start with the big question, right? We've always been told that a growing economy, a bigger GDP, is the main goal. But does having more money as a country automatically mean everyone's happier? The whole field of happiness economics, well, it's here to challenge that exact idea.
And this gets us to a really fundamental shift in thinking. You see, traditional economics is all about what they call revealed preferences. It's a fancy way of saying your actions speak louder than words. What you buy shows what you value. Simple enough, but happiness economics says, hold on. Why don't we just ask people how they feel? This is called experienced utility. The idea here is that the true measure of success isn't what we have, but our actual subjective well-being, how we feel day to day.
And trust me, this isn't just a philosophical chat over coffee. Moving beyond GDP has real, concrete implications for policy and the economy. It makes measuring happiness a really strategic goal. So, how in the world do we actually do it?
Well, here's the roadblock. How do you measure something as squishy and complex as happiness across millions of people? For years, the only tool we really had was surveys. But just think about it for a second. They're slow, they cost a ton of money, and they only give you this one little snapshot in time. A survey can't tell you how the public mood shifted, 5 minutes after a huge national event. They just can't keep up with the speed of life.
This is where technology steps in with a pretty incredible solution. Instead of asking people how they felt last month, what if we could just listen to what they're saying publicly right now? By using AI to analyze massive, and I mean massive amounts of public text from places like social media, we can get a live, constantly updating read on a nation's emotional pulse.
The tech that pulls this off is called natural language processing, or NLP for short. It's a field of AI that's all about one thing: teaching computers to understand our messy, complicated human language. All the jokes, the sarcasm, the emotion. It's the engine that can take millions of scattered public posts and turn them into one coherent picture of how people are feeling.
Now, a really quick but important point here. You might have heard the term NLP somewhere else. That's probably neuro-linguistic programming, which is a kind of communication model used in self-help. That is a totally different thing. So, just so we're clear for the rest of this explainer, when we say NLP, we're talking about the artificial intelligence that understands language.
But here's where it gets tricky. You can't just take an AI trained on English and expect it to work everywhere. The project we're digging into today centered on the Hebrew language, and let me tell you, Hebrew throws some really fascinating curveballs at AI.
Just take a look at this single word on the screen. To someone who only speaks English, it probably just looks like a string of letters. But hiding inside that one Hebrew word is a whole sentence structure that can just completely break standard AI models. So, here's a little quiz for you. How many separate English words do you think it takes to say what that one Hebrew word means? Go on, take a guess. 2? 3?
The answer is 5. 5 English words. That one word, uksim al mavobeda, translates to "and when from the lab." This is because Hebrew is what linguists call a morphologically rich language. It basically means it crams lots of different pieces of meaning into a single word. And this is the perfect example of why you can't just throw a generic AI at this problem. You need a specialized tool for the job.
Okay, so knowing that, the researchers on this project had a huge decision to make. How do you build a tool that's smart enough to handle a language this complex? Do you try to build it from the ground up, or do you find something that's already out there?
It's the classic build versus buy dilemma. You could buy a solution, use a ready-made tool from a big company. It's fast, the cost is predictable, but you're kind of stuck with what they give you. Or you can build it yourself. That gives you total control, but it's going to take more time, more money, and more expertise up front.
So what they chose a really smart middle path. They decided to build, but they didn't start from scratch. Instead, they used these powerful open-source models. You can see the names here, Hebert and Dictabert, which had already been trained on gigantic amounts of Hebrew text. This gave them the best of both worlds, all the control of a custom build, but without having to reinvent the wheel.
And this is how they made it all practical. This slide shows how they connected these big, high-level goals to actual things the AI could measure. So, for example, if the goal was to see a policy's impact, the AI tracked the overall aggregate sentiment score.
If they wanted to know what was making people feel good or bad, it looked for the top topics of public discussion. This is how you turn a big idea into real, usable data.
And you might be wondering, how good is it really? Well, let me just throw this number at you. 93.6%. Similar highly tuned models have hit that level of accuracy when classifying sentiment. That is an incredibly high level of reliability. It means we can be pretty confident that the emotional pulse we're reading is actually accurate.
All right, but with a tool this powerful, we have to talk about the ethics. We have to. When you're analyzing the public's feelings at this scale, handling that data responsibly is, well, it's everything. Job number 1 is protecting people's private information. As you can see, there are a few ways to do it. You could just black out names and numbers, but that can actually ruin the data for research. The gold standard for this kind of work is often using synthetic data. You basically replace real personal details with realistic but totally fake ones. That way, you keep the quality of the data without ever compromising anyone's privacy.
The other huge ethical piece of the puzzle is bias. See, an AI is only as smart as the data you feed it, and if that data reflects existing human biases, the AI is going to learn them and maybe even make them worse. So it's absolutely crucial to have a system to find those biases in the data first and then work to correct them, all to make sure the results are as fair and representative as possible.
So let's just wrap this all up. What are the big takeaways here? First, we are now at a place where we can measure societal well-being in a way that goes far beyond just money. Second, AI, specifically NLP, can give us that real-time emotional pulse. Third, as we saw with the Hebrew example, this isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. Complex languages need specialized tech. And maybe most important of all, this kind of power absolutely demands that we build in strong ethical rules to protect privacy and ensure fairness.
And that brings me to one last thing to think about. Just imagine a world where our leaders didn't have to wait weeks for a poll or months for economic data to see how they're doing. What if they could see in real time how a new policy was affecting the collective happiness of the country? How might that change the decisions they make? How might our world be different? That is the true transformative potential we're talking about here.